Hey everyone, here is my review on the Atramentis Steel Blue. First of all, I did this, most of this with the TWSBI Mini extra fine nib. As you can see, this blue is a nice deep dark blue. I'm not normally a fan of blues, but this one I might actually have to buy a bottle of it. The bottles come in 35 milliliters, which isn't a tremendous amount of ink, but then again, I don't really use that much ink at one time, so it's actually probably a pretty good amount for me. The thing I noticed about this ink is it's incredibly smooth. It flows very, very well. It's very wet, but yet the dry time on it, even on this Rhodia paper here, was actually very quick. It was an average of probably 5 seconds, which only the fancy Pilot erosion goo inks I noticed have dried faster, but then again, they weren't nearly as smooth either. So overall, this ink was very surprisingly good. It's not, I don't know if it's listed as a permanent ink per se, and it definitely made a mess of the paper when I tested that, but you could still read it, so, that's, for me, that's a pass. This ink is definitely for me a good everyday ink. It's nice and dark, and especially in the extra fine nibs, it doesn't, something like the Noodler's X Feather is going to feather less on a regular bad quality paper, but really this didn't do too bad. It has very little feathering, which is nice. So with that and the wet and the flow from it, it is definitely could be an everyday ink, especially in an extra fine nib. Like I said, only the Pilots I've seen so far have dried faster on papers than this, and I think they feather more on the lower quality paper. So there's not a ton of shading to it, maybe a tad. Didn't really notice that too much, but I am actually very pleased with this ink. And one last thing that I also would like to mention about it is a lot like the Pilot inks, it seemed to stay wet in the nib, so even with the nib being exposed and out, it stayed wet, and especially, well, in the TWSBI it stayed wet. So that's also something that I think is good that I haven't really noticed in some other inks. They tend to dry out a little bit, even with just the slightest amount of time being uncapped. But this didn't do that, so this is definitely so far one of my favorite inks, and I'll probably end up getting a bottle. So, thanks, and talk to you next time.